Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, then welcome to the channel for the first time. But for you guys who have been around, maybe it might feel like it's been a while. I haven't been as consistent. I've been in the process of moving, but we're finally getting settled in. We're finally kind of getting past that segment, so we're hoping to get a lot more consistent going forward like we've been in the past. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. Now, this video is a lot less scripted and thought out as some of my other ones. I've done videos like this before where I kind of just find some things I want to talk about and I talk about them. And one of those things that I want to talk about today is the Detroit Pistons. Now, I think the Detroit Pistons have mostly been talked about this year in a negative way, other than maybe like a couple days at the very, very beginning of the season, like their first couple of games. And I think I just wanted to change that up today a bit and find some positives about the Detroit Pistons and their season and, maybe even their future going forward. And we're going to start that off with what's kind of the catalyst of me wanting to make this video, and that's Simone Fontecchio. That's really what kind of started me wanting to make a video. I wanted to make one about Simone, but then I kind of broadened it to the Pistons at large. And Simone, if you've been around the league, watching the league a little bit, you probably know that he came in last season with the Jazz and had a couple big games right when he got there. And, it was not like huge games, but it was kind of like a little bit of excitement coming on with the Jazz. It was like, oh, who's this guy? Simone Fontecchio, with the name that's fun to say, having some good games. And then, he kind of chilled out. And, it was kind of one of those things where you wondered, is this guy going to really stick around in the league? Sometimes at the end of seasons, we see players come in and play for a little bit and maybe even play kind of well, or at least we perceive them as playing well. And then we just never really see them again. Some players that come to mind for me like that is a guy named Walt Lemon Jr., who played like 6 games for the Bulls, I want to say in 2019. And he had like 3 different 20 pieces in those games. So that's a guy where, like, at the time I was like, oh, who's this guy? Is he going to be something for the Bulls going forward? And nope, never saw him again. Another guy that comes to mind is a guy like Jabari Brown for the Lakers. If you're a Lakers fan, you probably remember Jabari Brown. He was on one of those really bad Lakers teams in the mid-2010s. And he played I want to say he played at least 20 games. But he had some pretty good games for the Lakers at the end of that season. So if you're unfamiliar, go look up Jabari Brown. And look at his stats from that one year with the Lakers. But basically, that's kind of what I thought or worried would happen to Simone Fontecchio. Yeah, he came in, had a little bit of success, but then kind of saw that success diminish a little bit. And, who knows if he's going to even really be in the league anymore. How many chances is this guy going to get? But he came back with the Jazz this season, and, he was playing pretty well for the Jazz. And now he got traded to Detroit, and he's been one of their better players ever since getting there. He's averaging 15.5 points per game on really good efficiency. And it's kind of just a breath of fresh air, I assume, for Detroit fans. I'm not a Pistons fan myself, but it's fresh air for me watching the Pistons. A lot of people don't like watching the bottom teams in the league, but I still like kind of enjoying that kind of basketball, seeing what there is, seeing who on this team could go on to be something. I think there's, at least some value in that. And Simone's looked really good. He's a player I like. Unfortunately for the Pistons going forward, or maybe it's not that unfortunate, but, you kind of ask the question, is Simone part of the Pistons' future plans? And unfortunately, the answer is probably no. For one, his contract's going to be up at the end of this season, and he's already 28 years old. He wasn't a young rookie. He was 27 last year, coming onto the scene with the Jazz, and now he's already 28. So he's probably going to, end up on maybe not a contending team, but a pretty good team and, fit in as a role player off their bench. Or at least that's what I think. Who knows? Maybe Simone's all about his buckets. He signs with, not a great team and just wants to put up 15, 16 a game. I don't know. I don't know him personally. But I would assume he ends up being a role player for one of the good teams in the league next year. But now that we talked about Simone, let's talk about some of the other good things that the Pistons have going for them this season and maybe going forward. And most glaringly is probably still, obviously, Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is a good basketball player. He can put up points. He can facilitate for his teammates. There's still some turnover concerns. But Cade Cunningham's a really good player. He might not be like a superstar, like some people thought. But he's also still really young. So there's a lot of career left. We don't know what Cade Cunningham's going to be. I know we like to judge people right away, but there's still a lot left to, see what he's going to do. So yeah, obviously Cade Cunningham's a building block for the future. And another guy that I like is Jaden Ivey. And thankfully, Monty Williams has finally realized that Jaden Ivey's a good basketball player. Sometimes he doesn't look the best. He has bad shooting nights. But, he's a young player. And, that happens. But when I watch him play, he looks really good. He seems like a fun personality off the court. And also, something I noticed recently watching him, he does like these nice finger rolls, like these little scoops. I really like those. I like watching him go to the basket and do like these little finger rolls. It's just fun for me to watch. And then you got players like Jalen Duren and Sasser Thompson. Both good defenders, good offensive rebounders. Sasser Thompson, not a great shooter. If he could even get to like a 30% three-point shooter, that'd be great. But, you have to believe that his offensive game is going to develop at least a little bit going forward. This is only his first year. But he's already such a good defender that, he's a big, major piece for this team going forward, I would think at least. Jalen Duren as well. Jalen Duren, I really like watching him play. I like watching him get rebounds. I like watching him dunk the ball. He could be a really good running mate for Cade going forward. There's also been a player like Marcus Sasser this season. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be something a little bit more at the start of the year. He had a couple really big games. I even made a video about him earlier in the season. And I think right after I made the video, he had like one more really big game against the Bucks. And then kind of did nothing for a while. He still had some other like good games here and there. But he's been a good shooter at least. So also if my video kind of like jinxed him or cursed him somehow, that's my bad, Marcus. But yeah, he's at least a positive going forward for this team. He's a good shooter and this team needs shooting. And then the last guy I really want to talk about is Isaiah Stewart. There's probably a lot that could be said about Isaiah Stewart. He's got some temper problems. But he's at least a legitimate stretch big man. And regardless of how you feel about him, there might be at least some sort of a market for him if you want to trade him. At the very least, he's a good shooter. And I genuinely don't really know how Pistons fans feel about Isaiah Stewart. I'm not really tapped into the Pistons fan base like that. But, he's a solid player. So if you keep him, there's probably at least some things to like. And if you get rid of him, I don't think it's that big of a loss for your team. But probably the best thing about being a really bad team in the NBA is that you're probably going to get a really good pick in the NBA draft. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about this draft not being that great, not having that many good players, or at least compared to other drafts. There's no like big superstar, can't miss guy. But I think very often we see a lot of players who aren't highly touted coming into the draft, go on to be great players. Donovan Mitchell was a late lottery pick. Shai Gilgeous was an 11th pick. A lot of guys get drafted lower and aren't seen to be like these big stars and go on to do big things. And I think there could be some guys in this draft who go on to be great players. Now, I will admit, as far as my basketball NBA knowledge goes, analysis kind of thing, draft stuff, like just the NBA draft in general, that's probably my weakest area of expertise. I don't even know if that's the right word to call it, because I don't have any expertise in it. I'm not like an NBA draft guy at all. I wouldn't take my opinions about the draft like with any weight at all. In the past, I've tried to be an NBA draft guy, and that gets me attached to prospects like Kay Felder and Dragon Bender, like guys like that. I'm like, oh, this 5'9" guy out of Oakland, Kay Felder, is going to be a hooper. And I still love Kay Felder. K Felder. If you don't know about K Felder, go watch some K Felder highlights. But yeah, there could be some interesting things for the Pistons to do in the draft this year. Assuming they don't fall, I think being as bad as they are, I don't think they could fall any lower than like 5 or 6. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But I think that's the lowest they could fall. But assuming they pick in the top 3, where they probably will, I think their best bet is a guy like Zachary Richardson. They need shooting. I think he kind of gets in the way the least of any of their already core guys, as far as the prospects that are available go. Because, they already have Cade running the point guard. I don't think they want to bring in a point guard and kind of disrupt Cade's ball handling and development like that. And then I don't know if they want to go the front court route. I know they like Jalen Duren. Maybe if they end up with like the first or second pick and Alexandre Sarr's there, maybe that's just too tantalizing to pass up. I don't know. But I think Zachary Richardson is probably their best pick. A guy like Ron Holland could also be interesting. I don't think he'd get in the way of their other kind of like prospects who are there trying to develop. But also, he's not the best. He's not the most polished shooter. So that could be a problem for this team that already kind of struggles with shooting. So for that reason, I think Zachary Richardson is probably definitely their best bet. But, we'll just have to wait and see it happen. Again, I'm not an NBA draft guy. Don't put too much stock into my opinions about the draft. And oh yeah, before I go, one of the other things I wanted to talk about was James Wiseman. James Wiseman has looked like a basketball player recently. He's looked decent, and I think I'm one of the few people that never completely got off the James Wiseman train. Although I will say, I was a big fan of Marvin Bagley, and I liked Marvin Bagley more than I liked James Wiseman. So when Marvin Bagley was on the team, I didn't like when Wiseman was getting minutes. I was like, I'll give those minutes to Bagley. But now that Bagley's not there, I like when Wiseman gets minutes. I like watching Wiseman play a little bit, see what he can do, see if he's developed at all. And, he's looked solid. Will he be a building block for the future? I'd be a fool to just buy into that already. But it's at least a good sign, and that's all you can ask for sometimes. Now, this is kind of like the end of the season. They have no chance of making the playoffs. The quality of basketball might decrease a little bit for, some teams at the end of some of these years. Like in the past, we've seen a guy like Tyler Ulis have some crazy games at the end of the season. So I think you always kind of have to have that in mind when we're talking about these games here coming to the end, especially for a team that's like not playing for a playoff spot at all. In fact, they might doing the opposite. They might just be like, hey, let's just let's kind of secure that number 1 pick a little bit more, huh? But also the Pistons are already so bad, I don't know if they even really need to do that. But it's at least nice to see James Wiseman take some steps forward. But hey, yeah, that's all I really had for you guys today. Not really a structured one. I just wanted to come here and talk some basketball. Because it really feels like it's been a while. And if you guys are watching, then hey, I appreciate it. Thank you. If you guys are new, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next one. I talk a lot of basketball here. We just have a good time, talk some hoops. And like the video if you guys liked it. If you didn't, then obviously you don't have to. But it really helps me out. It really helps the channel grow and reach new people. And yeah, I think that's all I really had for you guys. Thank you guys for sticking around and watching, and yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Peace.